Welcome back to some new PettyRevenge stories. I hope you had a great day. The first story is called 10 Years Revenge. I worked in a very stressful job for 3.5 years. Towards the end, I had some surgery and wasn't in a good headspace. I went into the back room one day and was sobbing. Well, apparently, sobbing at work was unprofessional and should just get a Xanax prescription, per the head of HR. I was off work on a mandated leave because of mental health issues when she called me to come in and tell me this. She also told me I was demoted and wanted to know how much the demotion was going to reduce my salary. I swear she was salivating when she said that. My manager at the time interrupted her and said, no, she never took a raise when she took the position, because she took the position as a favor to her old boss. So she doesn't get a pay cut. You could see how sad the head of HR got when she heard this. Eventually, I finally found a new job and was able to leave. This was over 10 years ago and I checked credit scores at the time for jobs. Mine was still suffering from my divorce. I could still remember the looks on her face when she told me that crying from the stress of the job was unprofessional and to go on Xanax. How she would hound me for every possible infraction, but ignore the harassment I reported. First, the company forgot to take my master key before my last day. So, on my last day, I saran wrapped anything in all the management offices I could get into. Pens, keyboards, chairs, snacks, scissors, etc. I left the key inside several layers of said wrap and left it in the offices before I left. Then, I raided. Around the time, the anonymous glitter bomb companies had started up. I didn't have a lot of money, but I set enough aside to send her a glittery package once a year or so. And to keep her from figuring out what the package might contain, I used several different companies, which each used different packaging. Sometimes I sent those prank candles that started as vanilla, but then turned to a fart scent. I heard she got married, so I sent her one of those congratulations cards that you had to destroy to turn off. Later, a beer that had to be destroyed to stop singing on her anniversary. Then back to glitter. No more than once a year, but on and off for 10 years. She retired, so I obviously stopped. They were sent to work, not home. The next story is called Put Them Everywhere. This happened back in 2009. I was waiting tables at an upscale steakhouse and the company culture was absolute garbage. The owner, Gary, was constantly throwing tantrums and screaming at everyone, and we all hated him. He'd line us all up before every shift, just to berate us, and yell how lucky we were that he'd hire us, because we were all bad at our jobs, and no one else would ever have us. Stuff like that. The only reason everyone ever stuck around was because the money was good due to the high ticket prices and solid customer base, and the fact that there weren't many other employment options for fine dining service in the area. In addition to being a massive prick, Gary was also a cheap bastard. There was this 6-foot tall dessert cooler in the kitchen that had a broken door. He put off fixing it for months because he didn't want to spend the money. So it was just sort of hanging on its hinge and you had to be really careful opening it. Inevitably, during the height of a Saturday night rush, it fell completely off and hit one of the servers. Hard. So she's lying there on the kitchen floor, bleeding from a serious looking wound on her head. And Gary is standing over her and screaming down at her. Way to go. Just brilliant. What the heck am I supposed to do now? It's the middle of the rush. You've got a full section. No one's going to be able to pick up your tables because everyone who works here is useless and incompetent. You should have been more careful. I'd seen a lot of his moves, but this was the hard line, and I made a decision right then that I was out. When I got home that night, I typed up a letter to Gary, telling him exactly why I was quitting and leaving no detail out when it came to his tantrums, his verbal abuse and the hazards in the workplace that he wouldn't address. I printed out 30 copies, went in early for my opening shift the following day and hid them all over the restaurant where guests would find them. In the menus, under the napkins on the tables, in between paper towels in the restrooms, etc. Some were in really obscure places, so that they wouldn't be found right away and would keep popping up randomly. Surprise! Allowing my legacy to live on. Then, instead of working my shift, I left before the pre-shift lineup. Fast forward a couple of days later, when a coworker reached out and shared with me the beautiful details of Gary's head almost exploding with rage when he found out about the letters. A couple of tables read them and walked out before ordering. People in the dining room could hear him screaming from the kitchen. Apparently, they were still finding letters weeks later, and every time one surfaced, the vein in Gary's forehead would pop out and he'd disappear into his office and slam the door. It remains one of my proudest moments, and my only regret is that I couldn't be a fly on the wall, watching this all unfold. The third story is called Shared Scooter. The other day I was in need of a shared e-scooter, and there were only 2 available in my neighborhood, which were near each other. The app showed they were not on the road, but rather in a private area. Where I live, this is usually not a problem, since most often this means they are in a yard of a block of flats that are freely accessible. Only this time it was a nearby homeowner that had decided to park the scooters in his private yard. The residents had parked the scooters close to the house, which was not easily accessible, but very close to their windows. Now, this is, of course, prohibited in the use of these shared scooters, and there was a complaint form that I could have used to make a complaint about these people and the parking. However, I decided to go in another direction. The app has a function, ring a bell, to easily find a scooter when you are searching for it. The sound scooters make is surprisingly loud, and there was only a 5-second waiting time between rings. So when I walked away from the house, the next few minutes I hit that button as if my life depended on it. I could hear it surprisingly far, and yeah, I was happy about it, not gonna lie. After a few minutes, the app showed that the scooter had actually moved further away from the house to a road, so I assumed my revenge was successful. The last story is called Buying Pizza. Back in the early 2000s, I worked at a well-known US pizza delivery chain store. On many nights it was literally just me and one driver taking care of the whole restaurant. Breaks were out of the question, because the restaurant would be completely unattended. The recent franchise buyers were complete and total idiots who would show up unannounced to yell at me. And the overwhelming majority of our customers ordered once, and then never again. We had pizza deliveries taking 90+ minutes, people bringing them back to the store. It was a nightmare. And I got paid $8.50 per hour to run shifts. One night I was running a shift, and it was particularly dead. Such nights were not uncommon, and they were basically the only reason I still worked there. Well, 11 PM rolls around, as I'm kind of standing by the phones watching the clock tick down, and a clearly homeless man walks in. He introduces himself as Ricky, and asks if we had any leftover pizzas that nobody picked up. I apologetically inform him that we didn't. He smiles and thanks me anyway, but then, since I'm in such a good mood, I asked him what he wants. He says he likes the meat lover's pizza. Since he isn't a sociopath like some of our customers, I'm looking at you, Mr. Teriyaki Bacon and Sardines guy. I say I'll be happy to make him one. Ricky at this point is so thankful that he sits down in one of our chairs and starts bouncing up and down like a little kid. I put the order in and pay for it myself. It ends up being $12, or basically an hour and a half of work for me. Good deal in my mind. Ricky watches me and applauds my dough slapping and spinning skills. As the pizza comes out of the oven, in comes the area manager, the brother of the franchise owner. He begins shouting as usual and accuses me of stealing from the store. As he goes into his tirade, one of our few regulars, Henry, comes in. Henry hears the tirade and looks very uncomfortable. I finally tell the area manager that I paid for the pizza out of my own pocket. The area manager shouts a bit more, calls me a liar, says the count better be right that night, and leaves. Ricky gets his pizza, Henry gets his, and they leave around the same time. I see them talking outside. The next night, Henry calls me for an order. This was unusual, because he was generally a once-a-week guy. I also found it unusual that he ordered a meat lover's pizza instead of his usual Supreme. I took it, made it, and 20 minutes later, Henry calls again apologetically to cancel it. I say okay. In a bizarre coincidence, Ricky rolled in right around that time asking for a pizza. I just had one that was going to go uneaten, sitting under the heater. And so began the nightly dance. Henry would call, order a meat lover's pizza, and I'd make it. Henry would then call again, cancel, and Ricky would coincidentally roll in. Every night, same time. You could time it to the second. This went on for months. Eventually, the area manager caught wind because a bootlicker coworker of mine knocked on me, but I responded that I was just doing my job as instructed. They then stopped putting me into the schedule rotation in a quiet firing sort of way, but I really didn't care. The restaurant went under about a year later. Obviously, it wasn't all Henry, but I was glad to see it go. Thanks for watching the video to the end. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please don't forget to leave a like, comment and subscribe. And if you have time, watch another one of my videos. And now, I hope you have a great day. Stay safe. Bye bye.